Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Pechek and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
It's good, and it is with a heavy heart that I say this is our last episode in Austin, Texas together.
Yeah, we're gonna keep doing the show, but we've got some interesting new things we're gonna try out once we're remote from one another, and you'll see as this develops. We will mention it. Still might miss an episode for me, but
we will not miss an episode.
Yeah,
another episode.
Yeah, we're gonna figure out.
We'll have on a guest if we have to.
Yeah. So F&M. I don't remember the F&M before I left to visit my family, but you do.
Right. I played Boris tokens and went 301. The deck is good. The deck is good.
Yeah. Any memorable matchups? Or I know it was like 2 weeks ago. So
there's just one game where I was playing against Alex on Zoo, and he only played one land, and well, I think I did like 16 damage to him via burn, and it wasn't pretty.
Why would you pick that one as the memorable match?
Well, this is just the one I remember.
Okay. But yeah, you've been enjoying the hell out of that deck, which is actually currently the number 2 deck in the format since banning Drake.
What can I say? I'm a net decker.
I mean, I think the deck's good, so no shame in that. I remember last night's because I went there. A little bit of a send off, I did some nice stuff for the community. I paid pretty much everyone's entry fee.
Oh, why aren't you just a saint?
Yeah, I played Pig Trinket. I did terribly, but terribly record wise, but all the matches felt close. I managed to land Crypt Rats against Elves pretty quickly. Almost got that match, and a little frustrating. Then I played against Teachings, which is a slog, and almost made that a draw. And trying to think, and then I played against Burn, which is a horrible matchup.
Well, I did not play at F&M. I was doing a late family Christmas where I received a year subscription to Crunchyroll, and I of course starting off the new year by watching the reboot of Sailor Moon and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, that's good. You should get on that.
Getting caught up on this.
So it's the first day of a new year. Let's talk about the last year. It's been a wild ride. Obviously, the podcast started in March or April?
Yeah.
And since then, we've had a lot happen in this format.
It's been a full year, and Mike, you compiled a list of all the playables we got this year, and the list is surprisingly stacked. The format is definitely different than it was a year ago.
Yeah, so someone somewhere brought up what sets have the most pauper playables in them. And I kind of sat down with, a lot of time while I was on vacation late at night and was just all right, let's see what set does have the most pauper playables. And I was kind of expecting it to be modern sets in the past year or two only probably have 1 to 3 playables. And I was honestly surprised. And these were things that I found in 5.0 lists on MTG Goldfish. Right. So they might not be amazing, but these are all things that have a 5.0 to their name for better or worse. So in this past year, we've gotten a lot of sets. So we got Oath of the Gatewatch, Shadows over Innistrad, Eternal Masters, Eldritch Moon, Kaladesh, and stuff from Commander 2016 that got shoved into the treasure chests. So let's start with Oath. So Oath was kind of an underwhelming set, right? The 5.0 card, I found 3 cards that have been in 5.0 lists. First up, Crumbling Vestige, which showed up in both 5-color boggles, and I've also seen it in traditional green-white boggles.
And for those of you who don't remember, that's a colorless land that comes into play tapped, and when it comes into play, you generate a mana of any color and add it to your mana pool.
Yeah, so people have tried to abuse this with core Skyfisher effects, so they can get the Karoo lands. But being able to have that any color turn 1 fixing is nothing to sneeze at. It is, however, I'd probably say the least impressive out of the Oath of the Gatewatch cards. So the next one is a sideboard card, Natural State. A green one green instant, destroy target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less.
And that has become a big sideboard card.
And tell me what it blows up most of the time.
Artifact lands in Affinity. Why would you bring that up?
Yeah, it is a very good sideboard card, and it kind of gives you an option in the one mana realm that isn't is it Nature's Claim?
Yeah, Nature's Claim, but without giving them the 4 life.
Yeah, and it still hits a lot of the early targets, because with Nature's Claim, you're either playing Infect where you don't care about the 4 life, or it's like, I need to be able to blow something up turn 1 or 2.
Right. Because otherwise you could just play Ancient Grudge or Gorilla Shaman. Exactly.
And this shows up pretty frequently in Stompy sideboards, usually accompanied by some number of Gleeful Sabotage, but that's a deck that likes low mana costs, and the fact that in Affinity it basically hits lands and drums is actually
and
just
Prism.
fine. Oh yeah, Prism too. And Ichor Wellspring if that's relevant for some reason.
Right. Yeah, give him a card.
And then finally, one that actually gives its name to an entire new archetype, Pulse of Marasa.
Right, and that's obviously the all-star from that set. That card is gas.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, when I looked at that card, it did not initially impress me.
Well, because the effects are both terrible by themselves.
Yeah, so Pulse of Marasa is 2 and a green, instant, return target land or creature from your graveyard to your hand, gain 6 life.
Right.
And it's one of those things where, if you took off any part of that, like if you made it only creatures or only lands, or you dropped it to like 3 life, this would not be good.
Or if it was a sorcery.
But it's just really solid. And like with Marasatron, you're doing disgusting things like, looping this with Mnemonic Wall. So you'll like wall, have it die, Pulse Marasa it back, play the wall again, get back Pulse Marasa.
Or even worst case scenario, if they blew up, a Tron land, you can get it back later.
Yeah. So just pushed enough. And that's kind of a thread through a lot of these cards. But yeah, that was Oath. Kind of underwhelming for a lot of formats, I feel. Like, I can't think of many other like format staples that came out of that set. Except for Eldrazi.
I was like, the Eldrazi are in that set, right? The bad ones, or are they in the next one?
What do you mean the bad ones?
The ones that got, made Ugin banned in Modern. The good ones.
Yes.
By the bad ones, I meant the good ones.
Yes. So it messed up Modern for a month or so.
But is that Oath or is that the other set?
That's Oath.
Okay.
Because Eldrazi Mimic, Thought Not Seer, Reality Smasher are all in Oath.
Okay.
So I guess
the
Oath,
rares were very good.
Yeah, there were some very pushed rares. Next, we got Shadows over Innistrad. So return to a fan favorite plane. Also, as a side note, when I was compiling all these, the original Innistrad did not have as many like cards volume wise, but it had a lot of like very like Delvers from Innistrad. Like
right.
that's a key card in this format. But Shadows, how did you feel about this block on a whole? Like I don't know. I have my opinions on it.
I was a little underwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So I found 5 things that have shown up in 5-0 decks. First up is Angelic Purge. Sorcery, 2 and a white. As an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice a permanent, and then you exile a creature, a artifact, or an enchantment.
And this was used in kitty decks and sacrificing like Ichor Wellspring.
Yeah, so you sack an Ichor Wellspring and get a permanent O-ring effect, because there's some stuff it won't hit in other formats, but with us, we don't have planeswalkers. Oh yeah, it also hits artifacts. Sorry, I don't know if I mentioned that.
Right.
It basically hits a non-land permanent in our format. And people were playing this because, you get to pop your Wellspring for value, and on top of that, you're also going to permanently deal with something.
It's an unconditional removal spell, basically.
So that one showed up for a while. It's kind of fallen out of favor, especially because,
It's slow.
It's slow, and a lot of the, Skyfisher decks are now kind of going towards the tokens route instead, right?
Right.
Next up, we've got Insolent Neonate, and this was 1 red for a creature with menace, so it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. And it had Sacrifice Insolent Neonate, discard a card, draw a card.
Right. So the way that this gets abused is you can discard a dredge card and then dredge it immediately, which is
that's in other formats. I guess it did show up briefly in Reanimator for that purpose.
Right.
But the place where this saw the most play was Burn.
Oh yeah, before. Yeah.
And the big thing about it was, it was functionally unblockable in the early turns, and a lot of the time, like, you didn't want to like have to leave back 2 blockers to block 1 point of damage. So people were kind of using it as Curse of the Pierced Heart,
or Goblin
Fireslinger, with the upside of when they actually do block it to kill it, you get to cycle a land for free, basically.
Right.
But kind of fallen out of favor for a card that we'll see later in the list. Next up, Pieces of the Puzzle. So sorcery, 2 and a blue. Look through the top 5 cards of your deck. Pick 2 instants or sorceries. Put them into your hand.
But put the rest in the graveyard.
Rest in the graveyard. This showed up in a handful of control decks. A little bit more on the rogue end of things. I mean, how bad does Dig Through Time have to get before it's unplayable? Like, think about it. This is a bad Dig Through Time, right?
Right.
It hits a limited amount of cards. You reveal them. It's got a lot of downsides.
And obviously more people are playing Forbidden Alchemy over this card. Because Forbidden Alchemy is an instant.
It's an instant. You also get to flash it back.
Right.
And Forbidden Alchemy also gets anything, and you do get like a tiny upside of it being hidden information.
Right.
Which in a control deck can be very important. Like, your opponent knowing you have 2 counterspells is sometimes good, but other times it's like, oh, well, my opponent definitely has a counterspell, so I can play around it. I've also seen, locally, we've seen pieces in Teachings. Nathan was playing it for a while. Some success there. But next up, Thraben Inspector. Hoo boy.
This card is the little engine that could.
Yeah, why don't you take us through this? Because you've been enjoying this card.
Well, this card is good.
Yep.
It's W for a 1/2 human soldier, which is not irrelevant unto itself. There is a rogue soldiers deck out there, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a clue token. Clue is you pay 2 mana, cycle it, draw a card. So this card is good because relevant creature types.
Yeah.
On a 1-drop. That's a 1/2. That creates an artifact which is good in Galvanic Blast. That you can pick back up with Core Skyfisher and create another artifact that you can cycle later.
Yeah.
It's a card that always replaces itself. It's a good blocker, has relevant creature types, and is super duper cheap.
So we were literally just before the podcast talking about it. Like, if this was a 1/1, it drastically gets worse.
And I forgot the icing on the cake. You can use this to flashback
Battle
Screech.
Yep.
So this card is just all upside in the deck that it's played in, which is Boros tokens.
Yeah. I saw someone. I think it was on the Rags to Riches stream from Card Kingdom, the most recent one. Someone was playing a Kuldotha Boros deck that featured Reckless Fireweaver, so a little bit different than the tokens list. And he literally described this as it's like a white Muldrifter, which I think is fallacious in some regards, but kind of not that far from the truth. Like, it's a value creature that comes down and does its thing and has a non-irrelevant body.
Right, but I think its biggest ability is the delayed cantrip that also contributes to your artifact count. Because worst case scenario, you can pop that to your Kuldotha Rebirth, or it adds to your Galvanic Blast Metalcraft count. Like, it just does so much.
I've also definitely seen people use it for early Glinthawks. Where it's it's not the optimal play, but
it's an artifact.
It's an artifact. It doesn't set you back on your land count, which is sometimes very important with that deck. Just like really, really solid.
Yeah, it definitely pushes the Boros tokens deck. It's just such a good utility creature, and Magic is just defined by its utility creatures a lot of the time. Like, they're not the flashiest things, but like they're the ones that do all the real grunt work. And this card just does all the work that deck needs it to do.
All right, so last from this set is Vessel of Nascency. So it's 1 green for an enchantment. 1 and a green, sacrifice Vessel of Nascency. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker, not that matters in this case, from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. So this is kind of a riff on commune with nature. And this is an effect we've been seeing green get a lot, where, you look at the top X cards, you pick a card that fits a quality, and the rest go to your graveyard. So it's like kind of a Tutor Impulse style effect. And this has shown up in a couple of graveyard-based strategies where, you pick the card that's best in your hand and the other 3 go to the graveyard.
Right.
Alex Ullman was trying to make this work in a Black-Green Delirium deck. I believe, God, I did this list like almost a week ago at this point, so I do not remember what list I found this in, but it's interesting. I really like these effects. I really like them at common. They're not a tutor, but they do.
They're deck filtering.
Yeah, they're deck filtering, and they also help fuel graveyard decks, which are very popular in our format, right? Like,
right.
I would, even though it doesn't, always put up numbers, I would definitely describe Tortured Existence as like a deck that a lot of people are aware of. Like, again, not tier 1, but
people like that deck a lot.
Yeah. All right. Next up. All right. We've got the elephant in the room. It's Eternal Masters.
Are we planeswalking to Eternal Masters?
So Eternal Masters, and this was the first set review I think we did.
It happened very early on in the life of the podcast, and months later, still talking about it.
Yeah. So we'll get the elephant in the room out of the way. Peregrine Drake happened.
Right. And easily the most powerful card that was downshifted and just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, emergency ban, like.
Yeah, this was a bit of a mess on Wizards' part.
Dark times.
Yeah. So as anyone who's been playing the format for a while knows, the format kind of temporarily got put on hiatus for a lot of people because Drake rapidly shot up to 25% of the meta.
Yeah, it was just the best deck, and this is one that we missed.
Yeah,
we missed a couple from this. We said it was good.
Yeah,
we didn't say it was format shattering. So
yeah, it we do not claim to be 100% on our reviews, but
I've been wrong once before. I think I can take one more.
Yeah, this was one that a lot of content producers also missed, and there were definitely people within the community who did point out that they thought it was busted, and they were right. And good on them for identifying that. But it wound up.
The thing about Drake was not just the infinite combo, right?
Yeah.
It was that you could go Drake, Muldrifter.
Yeah.
Like that was what was so absurdly crazy.
The issue was that a lot of the combo decks in Pauper are kind of all in. Like there's no backup plan in I wanted to call it Oops All Spells, One Land Spy. Like there's no backup there. It's just you combo out or you lose. With the blue-red Drake list and the Drake Tron list, they just kind of played a mid-range game and occasionally would drop like 2 or 3, like 2. It's a 2/2, right?
It's a 2/3.
2/3.
Drake's a 2/3.
Oh yeah, it's a 2/3. So yeah,
they would just drop like a sequence of flyers and have 6 power in the air and draw 2 cards. It was crazy.
Yeah, and like that play felt like it happened a lot more than it should, and it was just kind of this deck where it had 2 game plans, both of them were solid, and you played the one that your opponent couldn't deal with. And it really, really warped the format. Like, control all but vanished, We wound up... Interestingly enough, though, in the end, I think it was a net positive for the format because it shook things up a lot.
The format's a lot different now.
The format has gone from a turn 5 format where your turn 5 play is what matters to what are you doing turn 4? Because now that's, that's Battle Screech mana. That's, dropping an Angler. Like, turn 4 is definitely become like the pivotal turn in this format. That said, Muldrifter, still good.
Muldrifter, play it as a 4 in all of your decks. It'll change your life, man. All right, what's next?
Next up, Elite Vanguard. This is a card that white aggro decks have wanted for ages.
Right. Again, there's that Soldiers deck. There's Cyborgs, I guess. It's a white 2/1.
Yeah, it's just white for a 2/1. That's it. It's just a Savannah Lion. This effect used to be rare. Like this body used to be a rare.
Jackal Pup with the downside.
Yeah, Jackal Pup at a downside. Savannah Lions was an alpha as a rare. It stayed a rare for pretty much all of its life, I think. Feel free to correct me on that one in the comments. I know you're already thinking about it. But again, not like the splashiest, but just like we have not gotten a 2-power, one mana white creature, and that was something that the white aggro decks wanted. So, it's put up its results. It's not dreadfully complicated or like hard to see why it's playable, but it's there. Next, another Vanguard, Elvish Vanguard.
Now this is another rare downshifted to common that is surprisingly not like it's good, but it's not like insane.
Okay, so Elvish Vanguard, 1 and a green for a 1/1, which. And it's an elf. And it's from Onslaught, which was tribal elves. And it's where a large chunk of the elf deck actually comes from.
Also tribal goblins.
Yeah, also goblins. So, It's 1 and a green for 1/1. Whenever an elf enters the battlefield under your control.
I'm pretty sure it's any elf.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That is correct. It is whenever an elf enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Elvish Vanguard, because it's another one of the ones that makes the mirror really, really convoluted.
Right. It and Well-Wisher are like that, as well as Timberwatch Elf.
Oh yeah. So the idea with this is, you hit it like turn 2 and then combo out turn 3 and wind up with like a 20/20.
Right. And it really gave elves a lot more power, because elves was a go wide strategy. Now it could go tall in this one threat. And so you started creating these multiple axes on which you could interact with your opponent.
Well, so the big thing is, before, there was the chance, on your combo turn, you try and swing in with a couple threats and your opponent has the Electrickery. Here it's now like your opponent needs to go Electrickery into an Edict a lot of the time.
And it's just like another, so elves is a matchup that's defined by like the elves that you have to remove, and it just adds another elf that you have to remove. And we can go into that conversation another day, but just the fact that there's another lightning rod like in the deck is good.
Next we got Curdape. This has been a paper common for a while, but we got it with the amazing Therese Nielsen art that I love. I like the old one, but
it's just a sad looking ape.
I am just a sucker for Therese Nielsen's artistic style, and I really like the dynamicness of the actual piece in question. But Curdape has shown up in a handful of like zoo style decks. So it's a 1/2 for a red, and it gets +1. Oh wait, is it a 1/1 or is it a 1/2? I always forget this one. The point is,
it becomes a 2/3 when you.
It becomes a 2/3 when you got a forest.
Right, and so this style of effect is much better in modern decks, because we don't have
we don't have duels with
we don't
types.
have true duels.
Yeah.
Right. We don't
Also, I looked it up. Curdape's a 1/1. It gets +1/+2 as long as you have a forest.
Okay, something like that. Anyway.
But yeah, moderate success in the sort of like zoo decks, whether they be Naya or Full Domain. Not dreadfully impressive, especially in a lightning bolt format.
Right. It's just less good, because you can't in modern you can play Stomping Ground. It's already a 2/3. Here you have to have 2 lands to make it viable.
Exactly. The last one, another one that is having a current effect on the meta, Rally the Peasants. So, I believe in our review I said something to the effect of, Trumpet Blast isn't great, but maybe 2 Trumpet Blasts stapled together is.
Turns out doing 15 damage to your opponent in 1 turn is pretty good.
So the first time I played against this deck, it was against you, and I think your line was like turn 5, Battle Screech, flash it back. Turn 6, swing in, double rally, and I got hit for like 15.
Right.
In the air. And after blocks, I think you still had lethal. And it's just really, really explosive. The other thing is, even if the first half of it gets countered, you still have a use from the graveyard. Like, it's just very difficult to interact with this card in a meaningful way.
Right.
And, it's one of those things where you don't really care if your guys die, because most of them are tokens in that deck. So you're just kind of like, I'm going to lash out at you for lethal, and, you make your decisions.
And it's like if you get blown out, it's like you're not very far behind on material.
Yeah, exactly. Just, again, not a card that's like flashy or complicated, just it gets you in for lethal.
Yeah, it's just the very high raw power level.
Yeah. Now moving on. Eldritch Moon.
Whoa. No love for the goose?
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about that one.
It 5-0'd, right? Didn't that blue-green?
Yeah.
List?
So Nimble Mongoose, it was a 1/1 with Shroud for a green, and it has Threshold, gets +2/+2. So it's a 3/3 with no good way to target it. It saw a little bit of success. It has never replicated it.
No, it's just not very good in our format, and we were super pumped on it.
Yeah, in part because I remember how good it used to be in Legacy.
Well, Canadian Threshold.
Yeah, Canadian Threshold. That was the name of it. Where did it get that name? Was it just played by Canadians?
I honestly don't know.
Cool, because if it was white-red, I would get it, because, Canadian flag. And
yeah.
Usually when you hear a country, it indicates what colors it is, but...
Like Teamer Delver, I think, is an alternative name for the deck.
Yeah. But it was one of those cards where high power level lined up poorly with our removal. Because, edicts are still a very big part of the meta, even though they're not as great anymore.
Also, just maybe now with Ash Barons, you could play an actual like Canadian Threshold style deck. Now that you can cycle the Ash Barons, but just a lack of really solid cantrips and fetch lands. And
that being a 1/1 until you hit 7 cards in the graveyard, like, was a little rough to hit.
Right. Sorry, we can move on. I just wanted to throw that one out.
All right. So Eldritch Moon, only 3 things that have 2 of which have only seen kind of limited play. The first of which is Grapple with the Past. So it's 1 and a green, instant. You mill 3 off the top of your library. You return a creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. So again, kind of in the same vein as Pulse of Marasa, where you can get back 2 things. It also mills you, for Threshold, Delirium, what have you, other graveyard synergies. It's showed up in a couple of, black-green graveyard decks to, limited success, but if you have a deck that can really take care of it can really utilize the graveyard, this is kind of a 2-mana draw 3.
Yeah.
And I know that is hyperbolic, and I know people will get on my case about that, but it's kind of a draw 3.
Just like Squad Hawk is Ancestral Recall.
On a stick.
Yeah. It draws you 3 cards.
The other one that doesn't see a lot of play is Wretched Griff. 7 mana, 3/4. When you cast it, draw a card, and it has a merge of 5 and a blue. And for those who have forgotten about a merge, you can sacrifice a creature, and you pay the you subtract the CMC from the colorless mana. So like if you sacrifice a 3-drop into this, for its emerge cost, it'll cost 2 and a blue.
Right.
And a lot of people saw like this and were immediately like, oh man, you can sacrifice a Muldrifter for this and pay 1 blue to draw a card and get a 3/4. And it never really got there. Like, it's also Tronable. Like, again, relevant. Like 7 mana is a magic number when it's all colorless. But it just kind of showed up for a while. People tried really hard to make it work, and it never really got there. The last one, though, Thermo Alchemist. 1 and a red, 0/3 defender, tap, deal 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, untap Thermo Alchemist.
Right. Also very popular in Burn, as it turns all of your 3 damage spells into Fire Blast.
Yeah. And while we're here, I do want to discuss this. A lot of people have said that it's not actually that great in Burn, just because it baits out removal.
Well, I don't know.
Well, because this replaced Goblin Fireslinger, right? Which just was a pinger on a 1/1
I
body.
think it's better than Goblin Fireslinger.
And I think that's why it might actually be wrong, because people hate using removal on Goblin Fireslinger and are more prone to remove it.
Right.
After sideboarding. And I feel like this actually gives people a valid target for their removal where they want to leave in like their edicts and stuff.
Right. I have my opinions about Burn decks. Thermo Alchemist, I don't really know if it's I don't play the deck enough to really ascertain if it's right or wrong. It puts up results. And so if that's a style you're more comfortable with, then it's probably good. It does give you a little bit more reach, especially in the face of like gain lands or like repeatable life gain, which is, terrible for Burn. That being said, is it better than 4 Flame Rifts? I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird case of time will tell. Burn has had kind of a rough time ever since the gain lands got printed, because they just represent like, even just 3 life. If you can play 3 gain lands against your Burn opponent, you've basically undone a lightning bolt with no actual like loss besides the tempo. And yeah, it's just. So actually, here you go. Here you go. Most of the effects in that deck deal damage in chunks of 3, right? Mm-hmm. If you hit 2 gain lands, you're functionally starting at 22, and if everything in their deck deals roughly 3, give or take, it ups the need for 1 more Burn spell.
Right. Yeah. Gain lands are good.
Then like people are now playing Pulse of Marasa. People are playing Lone Missionary in their board in white decks. There's a lot of issues that it has right now in the meta. Next, we move on to the world of Kaladesh. And it's artifact based. Artifacts are good in this format, right? Like,
Yeah, sure, why not?
There's a lot of artifact synergy.
If you say so. I mean, I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but go on.
Well, let's start off with one that has nothing to do with artifacts. Cathartic Reunion. So in cons, we got Tormenting Voice, which was 1 in a red. As an additional cost, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Cathartic Reunion is 1 in a red sorcery, so they're both sorceries. You discard 2 cards as an additional cost, draw 3 cards. And this showed up in Reanimator because, like, the dream play is turn 1, Faithless Looting something, or, play a tap land. Turn 2, Cathartic Reunion, discard Ulamog's Crusher and Dragon's Breath. Turn 3, reanimate a hasty 8/8.
Right.
With Annihilator 2.
Now, I've blown out people by Hydroblasting this card. Very fun.
Yes, that is the catch. It is as an additional cost to cast this, discard 2. Although in that deck, I'm not entirely sure that's always going to be a winning play, because a lot of the times, like, the discard is good, but the draw 3 is kind of like, it's just there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this also sees play in Modern, correct? And
yes,
Dredge.
And Dredge.
Because
it's awesome.
Pitch 2 Golgari Grave Trolls, Dredge both of them. Go nuts. Did this make it into, like, Legacy Dredge?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I know that deck's not dreadfully popular in Legacy, but
not having Bizarre Baghdad is, not great.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Oh, having no Bizarre Baghdad. Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, that's not legal in Legacy.
No, it's not.
Next up, this is one that you get to take. I think you know what it is.
The Gear Seeker Serpent.
It is.
The big blue cruiser.
They printed Affinity on a card.
Yeah, I mean...
They did the one thing that we almost were guaranteed. Like, everyone was sure, like, oh, we're not going to get an Affinity card.
Gear Seeker Serpent basically gave Affinity a Gurmag Angler.
Well, it gave it a Gurmag Angler that eats Angler.
Yeah, it's a 5/6 for UU.
And then how much is it to make it unblockable?
I think it's 6, but who cares?
Yeah, so the only big issue with this was the fact that it's got 2 blue mana symbols in its mana cost.
Yeah, but that has not stopped it from being playable.
Yeah, and this usually shows up as a 1 of. I've seen a couple of 5/0 lists where it's been like a 2 or 3 of.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Having UU is a little restrictive. It's more so than I thought it was going to be initially. At first, I was like, whatever, play 4 of them, and that was wrong. I was wrong earlier this podcast. I'll be wrong again, but
I mean, you were right that it was playable.
Yeah,
right?
it's an insane card.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, it was slotted in with like the filler commons during spoiler season, and the moment I saw it, I was just like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, it's powerful.
I know what this text is. This is the text for Affinity. Like, you just printed Affinity for artifacts, the most busted mechanic out of. Actually, no, it's probably the artifact lands are the most busted thing that came out of Mirrodin for Pauper.
Well, it's because of Affinity.
Yeah. Oh man,
because of the arc, because of the keyword.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just
they're essentially all soul lands. You know,
this was just baffling to me that this actually saw print, and I'm kind of excited because like that's a high power level card for our format. This is probably one of the splashiest ones that we've gotten in the past year or so. Just for the sheer nature of like it's a quality mechanic. It's a body in a size that really does matter in this format now because Gurmag Angler is kind of one of the pillars of this format when it comes to like big creatures you see routinely cast. Like,
if you're in black, why not?
Yeah, a lot of black decks just kind of go, all right, I need a top end. I guess Gurmag Angler works.
Yeah. I'll just fill my deck with removal and utility creatures and then beat them down with 5/5s.
Yeah, exactly. Next on the list, Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot, which has showed up in a Mardu Skyfisher deck.
And is this just the best Puzzle Knot?
I think it is the only one that is playable.
Okay, fair.
So actually, no. I've seen the
white. I've seen the white one.
The white one has shown up in decks featuring Reckless Fireweaver because it represents a bolt across its whole life.
Right.
So, Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot, 2 colorless. When it enters the battlefield, you lose a life, draw a card. So it's kind of like a Ichor Wellspring with downside, but then it has 2 and a black, sacrifice it, draw a card, lose a life.
It's an Ichor Wellspring that
pops itself.
Yeah, with the little bit of Syne and Blood thrown in.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a 5 mana Syne and Blood, but it can also be like recurred and, do your Skyfisher things with it.
Yeah.
All the stuff that deck likes to do.
Right.
And also counts towards your
Battlecraft.
artifact count for, your Galv Blasts and what's the other one? Bleak Coven Vampires and the Mardu Metalcraft decks. But this is also interesting because it does raise the point of, versus, very aggressive decks, it does let you stagger that 2 life and 2 cards apart from each other. So you can get like the 1 card now and then wait to cash in the other one until you're a little bit more stable. And sometimes that 1 life does matter.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, Ichor Wellspring in the Kuldotha list kind of always suffered from the issue of, you get the bounce and replay it, but like the value play of like Kuldotha Rebirth on it was like a sometimes thing. It was sweet when you did it, right? Like 1 mana, get 3 1/1s, draw a card is good. But
yeah.
I don't know.
A little setup.
Yeah. Next on the list, actually, a card we've talked about a decent amount, Reckless Fireweaver. So one in red, 1/3. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield, ping your opponents.
Yeah, it's basically the other half of Disciple of the Vault.
Now, what is it? That series on? Oh, I'm gonna forget the name of it. It's I know the name of the series. I forget what website it's hosted on. Pauper Ponderings, the guy who does gameplay videos, recently did a Grixis Fireweaver list, which played blue for your thought casts and counter spells out the board.
Is it Arc Games?
Maybe.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't remember. Okay. I'm like terrible with names of anything. But it was playing blue for your draw and your counter, red for Galv Blast. I forget if he had bolts in as well, and Fireweaver. Oh, blue also had Ethereum Sculptor in it because like the dream is Ethereum Sculptor on the board, Reckless Fireweaver on the board, Disciple of Vault on the board, star, cycle through with 1 mana, sphere, and just burn your opponent for like 12, coincidentally. This one's interesting. It hasn't like really seen a lot of success, but it's a 1/3, and that body is like very difficult for some decks to deal with.
Right.
I've definitely played against this at F&M when I was on Dimir Alchemy, and I was so frustrated because I have Disfigure's main deck, and I was like, I should be able to kill the 2-drop, but it's a 1/3, and that's just such a problematic body for a lot of decks to deal with. Have you tried this one out yet?
I have 4 foils, but no, not really.
I bought them because it had the word artifact on it, and it was a common. How bad can it be?
I don't think it's bad. I just don't know if this archetype is, really that good. Is the problem.
Yeah. And last up, a sideboard card, Takedown. And I've seen this in a Stompy list. I had to hunt for this one because I do think it's a good option. So it's 1 green, sorcery. You either deal 1 damage to each creature with flying, or you deal 4 damage to target creature with flying. And it was basically being considered as an alternative for aerial volley.
It also had a picture of a Drake getting shot, as we've mentioned before on this podcast.
Yeah, I definitely I remember seeing that in the spoiler and being like, man, it would be funny. It would be kind of a funny little coincidence if they didn't ban Drake, and it's got this flavor text about a Drake.
Yeah, it was goofy.
And the big thing is
it's modal.
It's modal, and one of the modes kills Spire Golem.
Right. So it's solid, and aerial volley, of course, does not kill Spire Golem. So,
but the catch being aerial volley can kill Delver and a fairy.
Right.
So and is also instant speed, which is very relevant in that matchup. So Takedown, not seen a whole lot of success, but also not one of those cards where it's just like, wow, this is miserable.
Yeah, they'll just write it off.
And then lastly, after Kaladesh.
Whoa, hold on, sorry. I keep. Honorable mention Renegade Freighter.
Oh yeah, Renegade Freighter. I don't know if it's 5-0'd though.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, but that is a good one
just
to bring up.
a pet card of ours.
3 colorless vehicle. It's a 4/3 crew of 2. When it attacks, it gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn.
It did 5-0. It was a 1 of in the 14 swamp black deck.
That is correct. It was there. The big thing about this is the synergy that I got to live the dream with was getting one of these out in Stompy with a Nettle Sentinel.
Right.
And crewing, casting a Rancor on this Sentinel and swinging in for 9.
I mean, it's a sweet card.
I also got to live the other dream of a Delver opponent using Curse of Chains on a 2-power creature, and me getting to every turn in response to the trigger crew up the vehicle.
You're a nasty boy, Mike. Nasty boy.
It felt good.
On to the last card. We know what it is.
Yep.
I know what it is, at least.
Yeah. So Commander 2016 happened. And some of the cards from that and Conspiracy 2 made it online in the treasure chests. Sadly, we missed out on a lot of the stuff from Conspiracy 2 that I think would be cool, like Borderland Marauder and Sinuous Vermin and a whole lot of other things. But we got one thing. We got Ash Barrens.
Which is the most important one.
So Ash Barrens is a land, taps for colorless, and then it has one generic basic land cycling. Oh my god.
Yeah, this has really changed mana bases in the format.
This was one of those things where on face value, you look at it, you go, okay, it's a weird Evolving Wilds variant. What's the big deal? Tell us about some of your experiences with the card.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I did get to live the dream of playing it on turn 1, playing a 1-drop, careening it back to my hand on turn 2, and paying a mana to cycle it. So
yeah,
I've done
using
that.
the mana from itself.
But the reason it's better is because at its worst, you just play it as a generic mana source, and you can tap it that turn, or it's never negative mana is why it's good. Because when you cycle it, you can just immediately play the other land untapped. So like Evolving Wilds is sometimes like negative mana. It sets you back. It's tempo loss.
Yeah.
This card is never tempo loss, which is why I think it's so good.
I mean, so if you're activating at the end of your opponent's turn with like that spare mana you have, yeah, it's never tempo loss. Like the basic land, cast a 1-drop on your opponent's turn, cycle it on your second turn, you are putting yourself back a little bit. But as long as there's a lot of situations where it feels better though. And I think it's one of those things where it's not a strict upgrade. And there are still decks that will want Terramorphic.
But I think that by and large, people agree that it is better enough of the time that you should run it over Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic.
Side note, anyone who plays in paper, I would highly suggest picking up your playset as soon as possible, as Commander 2016 mysteriously went unavailable recently.
I already got mine.
Yeah, I need to pick mine up. I've been busy readying to move my entire life across the country.
Oh, well, excuse me, princess.
But Ash Barrens was just one of those things where, some decks, it was just like, oh, this just replaces my Terramorphics and my Evolving Wilds, immediately.
It is a little better in 3-colored decks than it is in 2 or even 4.
Yeah.
But 3 is kind of the sweet spot for the card, I think.
Yeah, I think even some 2-color decks where they have a very conservative splash of 1 color, and, it works well there. There was the list that showed up at Card Kingdom's Rags to the Riches that actually took it down. That was a Sultai-colored teachings list. With Desert that ran Ash Barrens to fetch the Singleton Forest in the deck, so that it could play Sprout Swarm.
I mean, we all make our choices.
He also notably in his sideboard had a Singleton Plains and a couple of Circles of Protection. The deck was interesting.
Yeah.
And it actually showed up last night 2 nights ago at my last F&M.
How'd it do?
I don't actually know. I could ask Nathan, but
oh, was he playing it?
Yeah. He had a Spicy Teachings variant. Why wouldn't he? But that's kind of the year in cards that we got, and it was a good year. There was one big mistake, but apart from that, everything else has solidly impacted the format in a good, meaningful way.
We really got a lot of good new stuff.
I do want to touch on another one that I missed on. I was really hyped on Bloodbriar. What is it? 2 and a green, 2/3. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Incidentally, a card that would prefer Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic.
Yeah. Just never got there. People tried it out in Aristocrats, and it was just a win more.
Slow.
Yeah, there is a situation where it's really good, but it always kind of felt like a win more. It's a really cool card, and I like it, and it's got sweet art. It's like this weird, like,
Blood Briar.
it's like a giant plant elemental.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's cool. No, Mike, it's cool.
As
No.
much as I may have disagreed with plot choices in Shadows over Innistrad arc, I really liked a lot of the art.
Yeah. You like H.R. Geiger a lot.
Yeah, Giger.
Giger.
Yeah. Sorry, but
I just said it that way to annoy you.
did you really?
No, I thought it was Geiger.
It does look like Geiger. But yeah, like I feel like this was a solid year. Pauper has changed a lot. Like the face of the format. As I said, like Koldatha Boros tokens is the number 2 deck in the format.
What's it
since
behind?
the banning? Delver.
Of course.
Yeah, Delver is never not going to be number
Well,
1.
Koldatha, I mean, that deck is gas.
Yeah, I think, eventually the meta will adjust. I'm not sure, if it's an absolute like tier 1 list forever. But no, it's been interesting. Like
I think the biggest indicator to me that things have changed is the fact that there are just new archetypes, right? Like you said, like Koldatha Boros was kind of a deck before, but like it's just like I don't know. It's something else now. A 3-bit Inspector made it something else, and also
Rally.
Yeah, Rally. But I was also thinking that Dimir Flickerless that's been doing really, really, really well lately.
Oh,
like
the one that locks you out of the game with
yeah,
rats.
Yeah, the
and
rat
Flicker.
lock. But like that wasn't a deck. When Drake was legal.
Well, Blue Black Alchemy kind of arose during Drake because it was kind of like
That's another like very new.
Yeah, like a
twist.
slim down diet teachings
Yeah.
mixed with gourmet Angler Delver.
Right.
Just one of those things where it's like, wow, this just looks like you took 2 decks, slammed it together, but turns out it's not bad. It's still putting up numbers.
I'm just saying, even in the time that Drake has been banned, there have been at least 3 decks then that have just risen to prominence.
Yeah,
like that were not around before the banning.
Morosatron came back stronger than ever. It's actually got like a decent amount of variety within itself. There's this blue-red Delver deck that splashes for...
Yeah, I've played that deck. That deck is sweet.
So which version did you play? Did you play the one with Thermo Alchemist in it?
No, I don't think that deck. I don't think it needs that card.
I've played against that. Do you want to know what makes Counterspell better?
Thermo Alchemist?
Thermo Alchemist.
I just don't think it's better with Thermo Alchemist because I don't
That's
think
fair.
I think it's good because it has Flame Slash and Bolt.
Oh, Rugtron is back. It still keeps putting up numbers.
Yeah.
I even saw a red-green Tron deck the other day that just kind of drops fat creatures.
Some people can't be helped, I guess.
Some decks have gotten worse. Is it Blitz has kind of suffered? I don't know. I can't say I'm like upset about that.
Mono Black is like still.
Mono Black has been putting up numbers every now and then, but nowhere near its former glory.
Boggles
has been doing pretty well actually.
Okay.
It's around Elves numbers. I don't know. It's just. I feel like as painful as it was to live through Drake, at the end of it, we got a weirdly diverse meta that's actually quite healthy and kind of doing things instead of just kind of being like, oh,
yeah.
well,
And 2017, hopefully, we got a lot of cool looking sets coming out this year. Aether Revolt will be the first one.
Then we've got Amonkhet and Hour of Destruction.
Right. Like we just have a lot of sweet looking sets coming out. Hopefully they'll keep up the card quality. And we'll just have to see, a year from now we'll be doing the year in review of 2017 and who knows what will have happened.
All right, let's see if next year we can't not miss, the card that breaks the format. Although it looks like at this point, actually when was Cons released? Cons was the year before this, right?
Yeah, sure. I think so.
Oh no! It was 2 years. It was the fall set of 2014. Because I was gonna say they broke the format then by accidentally going, "Oops, here's Ancestral."
Yeah, Treasure Cruise.
But I was gonna say they've had a pretty good track record of not breaking our format in half and fixing it when it does. And a lot of people were kind of critical about the fact that a emergency ban got used, and Wizards has kind of defended this as saying it's an online only format, which obviously not 100% true, but that's how they choose to look at it. And I'm okay with them banning stuff halfway through a set
Well,
release.
it was a mistake for them not to ban it at the ban time.
Yeah, it was already a problem by the time the Kaladesh ban and restricted went
Absolutely.
out. So, what were your top 3 cards from this year?
3-bit Inspector.
Okay, in no specific order.
Yeah, Gear Seeker Serpent. And Rally the Peasants are the most played new cards I have used.
So for me, I'm gonna go with Pulse Marasa. I really love that card. It dirtles extremely well. Exactly what I like to do. Ash Barons, and I am also gonna say Thraben Inspector for sheer like impact on the format.
Yeah, the card is just so good.
And it's New Year's. Do you have any? I've got a Magic resolution. I'm gonna play more aggro decks in the new year. I'm gonna like try and force myself into like finding an aggro deck that I actually enjoy, that has like a depth of play that can actually engage me. What are you doing for this year?
I'm gonna finish foiling Pig Trinket and Koldatha and as a joint from us, 100 more subscribers to the podcast.
Okay, I can get down with that as a resolution. In the new year, we will be bringing you a lot more content.
Maybe we'll finally get our Patreon online.
Yeah,
fingers crossed.
With me moving, getting a more steady source of income and all that good stuff. I'm also probably going to finally get a PC because I work in design, so I'm a dirty Mac user. But I'm probably going to stream. You're probably going to stream. We're going to try and do more video content. Podcast might have actual good video at some point.
Yeah, we've got a lot of really cool stuff planned.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people were like not super wild about the video that we did do because it was just kind of 2 guys sitting on a couch and not much else.
Yeah, examining our navels.
We've got some plans. I'm not going to spoil it all for you, but I am going to make it worth watching a video version of it.
Right. I've seen what he's cooking up in the lab, and it's a spicy little meatball.
Yeah. But we will continue on, despite being distant. Anytime one of us goes to visit the other one, we will definitely do like a live in the same room podcast if possible. Bring back the good old days, and 2017 is going to be good for Pauper, I feel, and us as well. I think we're.
I think that's about it. Thanks for joining us today. Please check below this video or in the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games and Elle for the use of his song Quantitative as our theme music. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we're signing off for Color Commentary.